Now we have an overview of the seedless vascular plants. Now before we go into that, we have to talk about vascular plants in general. All vascular plants have vascular tissues. These are the xylem and phloem, which conducts materials throughout the plant. This allows for plants to get larger and allows them to send roots deeper into the soil. All vascular plants have a dominant sporophyte. Now remember, in the previous video we talked about how non-vascular plants have a dominant gametophyte. So with all vascular plants, the sporophyte is the dominant stage. The plant itself is the sporophyte. Now remember, vascular plants are subdivided informally into those without seeds and those with seeds, and we're talking about the seedless vascular plants in this particular video. So for seedless vascular plants, they still use spores for dispersal, and most of them still have flagellated sperm, which requires environmental moisture to complete the life cycle for fertilization. We have the same life cycle as before, but before we go into that, we've got the phylum Lycophyta or Lycopodiophyta. These are the club mosses. We have the phylum Monilophyta, also known as the Pterophyta, which includes the ferns, the whisk ferns, and the horsetails. Now, of course, everybody knows what ferns look like, and here's some examples of ferns. Whisk ferns look kind of like a whisk broom, and club mosses are kind of mossy, but you'll see these little club-like structures at the top. And of course, with horsetails, they're almost like bamboo. So let me bring this over here. Get this glare out of here. So this is all mixed together. This would be a club moss. This would be a horsetail. They're not in the same phylum. Here's another horsetail, and there's another club moss. So that's just an example of what they look like. Now, the life cycle of seedless vascular plants is pretty much the same regardless of which one we're talking about. But the plant itself is the sporophyte, and the fern, of course, will produce and release spores. Now, with the fern plant, you'll see these little structures underneath the leaves. Those are called sori. They produce and release spores. The spore becomes the gametophyte stage. Now, the fern gametophyte is small, paper thin, about the size of your pinky fingernail, and is heart-shaped, and it's called a prothallus. They will produce the eggs and sperm, and you'll have fertilization, and the zygote will grow out of the gametophyte and eventually become a new fern. So with these specimens here, maybe you can see this, but on the underside of the leaves you might see these little brown rows of sori. Here's another one. You can, let's bring it closer. And they release the spores. There's the gametophyte. This is after fertilization, where the sporophyte grows out of the gametophyte, just like it did in the moss, except the difference is the sporophyte becomes a new fern plant and the gametophyte goes away. So that's an overview of the seedless vascular plant groups.